All right, hello, welcome back. This will be the 2024 State Calculator Applications Guide. This is the test that's only got 341 on, so thankfully it's a lot easier than Region. However, there are still some pretty complicated problems that require a lot of thought. It's a very unique test, to say the least. Let's begin. Okay, start off with the easy stuff. What number equals the sum of 68.6 and 88.4? Add them together. 157. Was the product of 4.71 and 8.93 divided by 75.4. Just put that all in your calculator, get your answer, move on. Number 8, Valkyrie buys an item costing $27.40. How much change does she get back if she pays with two $20 bills? Well, two $20 bills is 40 bucks. 40 minus the amount she spent means she gets back 12.60 or $12.60. Okay, radius of a circle given a circumference. The circumference of a circle is 2 pi r, so 2 pi, your unknown radius, is equal to 0.0995. EQ solver or divide pi in 2 by this value, and you get 1.58 times 10 power to negative 2 as your radius. Number 10, rectangle, what's the area of it? Area of rectangle is width times height. Multiply them together, 21900. Taylor Swift played the U.S. Bank Stadium in Minneapolis in 2023. Stadium seats 73,000 people, and tickets cost $1,450. What was the gross revenue for a sellout performance? Well, on paper, this problem's easy enough. You just have to multiply it. I believe the real challenge was figuring out how many zeros to put. You'll get times 1.0585 times 10 power to 8. So that means after the 1, you need 8 digits before you get to the decimal place. Because it's a dollar sign problem, you have to write to the nearest cent. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8. And then the 0 cents. 17, a chicken on average lays 2 eggs every 3 days. The commercial farm wants to produce 800 dozen eggs daily. How many chickens must be laying? Well, first off, let's figure out how many eggs they want. A dozen is 12, so 800 times 12 is 9,600. And chickens lay at a rate of 2/3 eggs per day, 2 eggs every 3 days. And so basically you have to divide the amount you want by the rate to figure out how many chickens you need to do it, because the number of chickens times the rate will get you the total number of eggs. You're just reversing that formula. So divide by the 2/3, and you get 14,400 chickens that need to be laying eggs. And you can go counter prove that. 1440 times 2/3 will get you 9,600 eggs. Okay, number 18. There are 196.9 million iPhone sales in 2020 and 242 in 2021. What's the percent increase? Well, percent increase is new minus new minus original over original. In this case, all the millions are just going to be divided out by each other. Like you can imagine, if I put million here, it's going to be divided by the million here. But instead, I'm just writing the numbers that matter. So 196.9, 242, that's all you need. So you plug it into the equation, multiply it by 100 to turn into a percent, and you get 22.9%. Okay, a right triangle. You're looking for this angle right here. Definition of cosine inverse is plug in adjacent over hypotenuse, and it gives you the angle. Just make sure you're in radian mode. If you do that, you get 0.866. Okay, a right triangle. You need to figure out, or an area of a triangle is width times height. So you need to figure out this width. Well, you can use Pythagorean theorem to figure that out. Square root of c squared minus a squared or slash b squared equals a slash b squared. And then you have to multiply, that will get you the length. Then you have to multiply by the height again and divide by 2 because that's the formula for our triangle. Do that and you get a value of 631. A loaf of bread bakes at 350 Fahrenheit for 35 minutes. The oven heats to room temperature or from room temperature at 40 degrees Fahrenheit per minute, and it takes the oven 1 hour and 45 minutes to cool. Not yet. Okay. So yeah, we got to add up all these times together to see how long it's heated above room temperature. So 35 minutes to start, and then the amount of time it spends heating. Well, it heats from 75 degrees to 350 degrees. That's a change of 275 degrees happening at 40 Fahrenheit per minute. So divide by 40 to get the amount of time it takes. And then you have to add it by the amount it time by the time it takes the oven to cool. 1 hour, 45 minutes. And then this is the answer in minutes, so you need to divide by 60 to convert back to hours. Okay. Jim's Apple Farm is the largest candy store in Minnesota. Diddy can drive there from Sherman, Texas in 13 hours, 25 minutes, averaging 64.7 miles per hour, or she could walk there in 285 hours. What is her average walking speed? Well, first off, we need to figure out the distance, so we can divide it by the time and figure out the speed. So distance is speed times time. So 64.7 times 13 hours and 25 minutes. This is converting from minutes to hours. And then once you have that value, divide it by the time to get the speed of 3.05. 28, this is a problem that's more complicated than it appears on surface. Synchronous orbit is defined by r of s is equal to the cube root of gmt squared over 4 pi squared. And it gives you the values of all this stuff. What is g? Now, normally you'd think that you just plug all these values into the equation. However, there's a catch, and that catch comes from what they want you to answer in. This is meters, this is seconds, this is days, and this is miles. These are not comparable units. You have to convert days to seconds and miles to meters. So you'll use side tools for that. You don't know how to do that, go to apps, scroll up, side tools, and then you can do length and time conversions. So yeah, convert 26,190 miles to that many meters. It's a long number. I'm not going to read it out. And then this many days to like approximately 86,000 seconds. And then once we have that, now we can plug it back into the equation. R of S converted equals cube root of our unknown G times your mass, that stays the same, thankfully, times the time that we converted squared over 4 pi squared. Do that, you get a G value of basically like 6.666666 times 10 power negative 11. And there are 4 SDs because, as you can see, all this stuff is just being multiplied and divided. And then a cube root that doesn't affect significant digits, I don't believe. So you need the lowest number of SDs of these 3 values, which is clearly this with 4 SDs. Because this 0 is not a significant digit. I mean, ask the people who define significant digits as to why. But in any case, you get 6.667 times 10 power to the negative 11 meters cubed per kilogram second squared. On to a few easier problems. Volume of a sphere, you should know this by now. R cubed times 4 over 3 pi. Just put that in your calculator and you get 1.31 times 10 power to 3. Okay, cube. Total surface area is 103. And you need to figure out what this length of AB is. Well, first off, let's figure out the side length of the cube. So there are 6 squares on the cube, so you have to divide 103 by 6 to find the area of a singular square. And then you take the square root of that to find a side, of course. Then once you have that, you have a side in an isosceles triangle, basically. So you can multiply your side by square root of 2 to get this hypotenuse. Or if you don't want to trust that logic, do Pythagorean theorem. This side squared plus this side squared, which is the same thing, square root of that. It's the exact same thing as multiplying by square root of 2. Regardless of the method, you get 5.86 as your value for AB. 36, a ball is dropped from 40 inches and it recovers 80% of its height. What is the total distance traveled by the ball? Well, in this case, you have to imagine basically what happens is it starts 40 inches and then it goes down, or it goes down 40 inches, and it comes back up 32 inches, goes down 32 inches, comes back up 24, down 24, etc. So as you can see, for the pattern to make the most sense, there would have to be a 40 at the beginning. So let's assume that we start off the ground and go 40 inches up. So you multiply by 40 by 2 to get your starting amount traveled. And then each time that value is multiplied by 0.8, which is a geometric series. So we use our equation for a geometric series, starting value times 1 over 1 minus the ratio of 80%. In other words, you're multiplying by 5. And if you do that, you get 400 inches. And then you have to subtract the 40 inches to get 200 hold up. Yeah, 400 minus 40, you get 360 inches. And then divide by 12 to convert the feet. And you get 30 feet. 37. This is easily going to be the hardest one for me to explain, but I will try my best. The right side isosceles triangle has a hypotenuse dimension of 14 inches. It is placed on a 1 by 1 grid with both ends of the hypotenuse at top grid points and on the same grid line. What is the percent error in approximating the triangle area by counting 1 by 1 inch grid squares lying completely within the triangle and multiplying by a single grid square area, 1 inch? Okay, it's hard to figure out where I'm even going to begin with this, but first off, here's what the triangle is going to look like given all the information. It's on different grid points and on the same grid line, so basically that means the hypotenuse is flat. So you can imagine, since in an isosceles triangle, this is a right angle. These are 45 degrees, which means this line here can be represented by y equals x. So at x equals 1, the y value will go up to 1, and therefore 1 cube can be formed from x equals 1 to x equals 2. You continue that pattern. At x equals 2, y is equal to 2. There's 2 cubes that can be formed from 2 to 3, or x equals 2 to x equals 3. This pattern continues until you get to 6. Now x equals 6, y is equal to 6, and now you go from 6 to 7, and you make 6 squares. However, once you're at 7, the line changes to y, basically 14 minus x. And now going from this x equals 7 to x equals 8, you can still only form 6 squares. And then the pattern reverses itself, basically, going down 1 instead of adding 1 each time. So basically, what you're doing is this. You're adding up all the stuff for each x value you would have, and you get an approximated area of 42. Now the easier part, figuring out the actual area of the triangle. It's an isosceles triangle. Each one of these sides is the hypotenuse over square root of 2. So 7 square root of 2 is a side. Square that, you get 98. Divide by 2, you get 49 as your area of the triangle. And then you do your equation for percent error, which is estimate minus actual over actual. Do that, you get negative 14.3, and you're proud of yourself for answering this pretty darn hard to understand question. 38, Jim runs laps around the 1/4 mile track, 7-minute mile. After 9 minutes, Daniel starts running from the same starting point, running in the same direction. How fast is Daniel running if he catches Jim in 1 minute and 9 seconds? So first off, let's figure out how far Jim travels in the 9 minutes. Jim travels 1 mile in 7 minutes, so his rate is 1 mile over 7 minutes, essentially. And this minutes is converted to hours to make things easier. or for the answer to be in miles per hour. Then you multiply by 9 over 60. 9 minutes over 60 convert to hours. And if you do that, you get a distance of 1.2857, which around the track would be, which on the track you have to count for all the times he's lapped Daniel. So you have to track 0.25 times 5 to get 0.0375 miles ahead of Daniel when he starts. But now, once we have that, we can use our equation to figure out when the distances are equal. So you know that rate times time of Jim, basically, this is his rate, and then the time that's spent catching up, or that Daniel spends catching up, so 1 minute and 9 seconds, plus his head start that we calculated earlier, has to be equal to some unknown rate that we're looking for times that same amount of time. Put that in an EQ solver and you'll get an X value of 10.4. Okay, 39, an equilateral triangle and an inscribed circle. You're given the radius, and you need to figure out this side right here. Let me draw a triangle real quick to hopefully help you visualize, but basically what's happening is here. This would probably make it easiest to understand. First off, imagine this triangle, or this circle. There are this entire just circle area. There are 360 degrees in a circle. So each one of these three segments, ignore this line for now, can be cut up into 120 degrees. And then this line cuts that in half to form 60 degrees. So this is a 60-degree angle. And now once we have that, the problem becomes way easier. Tangent of your 60 degrees times your adjacent gets you your opposite. And then multiply by 2 to account for this side as well. Do that, you get a value of 3,000. Parallelogram, AB is 0.239 and CD is 0.155. And and you're given that AB is 0.239 here. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to figure out this DC, but let's start by figuring out the distance from this midpoint to D here. So we can use that with SSS to find this angle X right here. Believe you'll get a pretty high value here, something around 70 or 80. Let me check actually. I probably should have wrote it down, but I'll get it real quick. You should get a degree of 85.73 around. And then once you have that, you can use SAS to figure out the distance from here, given this side, and this angle. But how do you figure out this side? Well, since it's a parallelogram, these diagonals cut the other diagonal in two. So in other words, this length right here is 0.239 over 2. So now you have your two sides we were talking about, you have your angle, and that will officially give you this side. And since we just talked about the diagonals of a parallelogram divide each other in two, multiply by 2 again to get the distance of, or CD, 0.377. 46, Mr. Kimball wants to provide each student with a pad of paper, certain amount of writing area. 3-inch pads containing 50 sheets is acceptable. How many sheets should be in a 4-inch pad? Sheets have equal thickness and identical shape. Well, the area, or the amount of writing space, you can imagine if you're writing on a paper, is based on the area. So an area is based on a side squared. So that's going to be our ratio, 4 over 3 squared. So 4 squared over 3 squared. So a 4-inch pad has 16 over 9 times as much space as a 3-inch pad. Therefore, to make an equal amount of thickness, you have to divide that by the 50 sheets of 3-inch that were acceptable. And you have to round up because you can't have anything less than what's acceptable. And if you do that, you get a value of 29. 47, Keith flew as part of his job duties. His annual flying miles from 2018 to 2022 are 28310, yada, yada, yada. I'm not reading all of those. How far did he fly in 2023? So you're not given, or you're given your x values in years, your y values in miles, and there's nothing to insinuate that this is anything other than plug in x and plug in y for your linear regression. 47 is always a linear regression problem, by the way. So then you use linear regression, you store the equation y1 by pressing alpha and then F4 on the in linear regression, in store regression. And then you do y1 of the 2023 year you're looking for, and get 1.05 times 10 power to 5 miles. 48, for what value of v does 5v power to 5, yada yada yada. 48, always easy. Plug it in EQ solver, get your answer. You don't even have to, this is a problem where you don't have to worry about your guess because because it's basically the function is always continuous. So if you do that, you get a value of 1.87. 49, you're given the volume and you have a cube with a spherical cavity. So let's do the equation for volume of this stuff and assign it to 460. So volume of a cube is your unknown a cubed. You should know that. And then since it's a cavity, you have to subtract the volume of the sphere that's formed. And volume of sphere is going to be your diameter, which is also a, over 2 cubed times 4 over 3 pi. And that value gets you 460. Do that and you'll get an a value of 9.88. 50 identical cones and cubes. What is the length of this cube? Well, what's kind of happening here, so what's happening here basically is, as you can hopefully see, this line up here and this line over here would form a right angle. And hopefully you can understand, since it's an identical cone and cube, these lengths are the same. So this is an isosceles triangle, and you can get this length from here to here by dividing the hypotenuse by square root of 2. It's a right angle because this is a cube going from straight down to straight right, 90 degrees. Then once you have that value, you have to subtract it by this height of 0.662. And then once you have that, you're given half the distance of the cube, so multiply by 2 to get the full distance. And you get 0.274. Write in properly. There we go. Okay. 56, calculate the area enclosed by these two curves. We have a program for this. Put this into y1, put this into y2. Use our OXOR program. The program will be able to find the intersections on its own, so no input. Do that, and do that and look for a hatched area, and you'll get a value of 41.4. I guess I'll give you a little context on no input. What no input does is it uses EQ solver for y1 equals y2, and makes a guess at y equals 10 and y equals negative 10. That will work on almost all continuous equations. However, sometimes if one of the equations is like sine, for example, it can repeat itself multiple times between negative 10 and 10. In that case, you'll have to use either our sum program, where you make a middle and estimate the distance yourself, or just find the intersection manually and use yes for input. In any case, let's continue. 57. A car accelerates from rest to 60 miles per hour in 18 seconds. The velocity increases sinusoidally during the acceleration according to 1 minus cosine of pi t over 18 times 30 miles per hour. How far did the car travel during the acceleration from rest to 60 miles per hour? Well, it's given that it accelerates at that point in 18 seconds. So once that happens, our distance is equivalent to the integral of velocity, basically. I guess how would you put it? Yeah, you have to integrate the equation to go from velocity to distance, basically. So you have to integrate this. So integral from 0 to 18 seconds of the equation that we talked about times the speed, which in this case is going to be, we have to convert from feet to feet per second because the second here and the feet in the answer choice. So 30 over 15 times 22. Integral from 0 to 18 of that gets you 792 feet. 58, what is S23? If S is equal to TU, T is equal to this humongous thing, and U is equal to that humongous thing. Well, you're just going to have to plug these two into matrices. So second matrix, edit, put it into matrix A and matrix B, and then multiply them together. Do that, and you'll be looking for the point at 2, 3. So that means row 2 and column 3, which is going to be equivalent to this point right here. So look for that on the new matrix that's formed, and you get negative 197. 59, it's given it's in radians. And what x value does tangent of negative 1 have a slope of 0.1? Well, you're just going to EQ solver for that. The derivative of tangent of negative 1 of x is equal to 0.1 at what x value? Pretty much just the exact same thing they're talking about. Do that, you get an x value of 3.00. 60, square and semicircles. Okay, almost always when you're dealing with hatched area like this, you need to form a triangle and a circle segment as seen here. Hopefully you can see this divides the hatched area in two. So we're going to make an equation for that. Half of the hatched area, we're going to be looking for this hatched area right here, basically, stuff up here, is equal to what would be the entirety of this circle here. So x over 2, this is your x value. So radius squared times pi over 4, since it's a fourth of a circle. Then you have to subtract the triangle that formed, or that you have to remove the triangle part to leave yourself with only this. So once again, your side squared over 2, since it's an isosceles triangle. Do that, and you figure out your x value with EQ solver, and you'll get a value of 6.71. 61, one strobe light flashes at 48 flashes per minute, and second one at 51 flashes. What's the time interval between strobes flashing at the same time in sync? I'm going to tell you how you solve it first, and then I'm going to try to explain why. Figure out the greatest common factor. In this case, it's 3. Divide the total 60 seconds by 3 seconds to get 20.0 seconds. Now, hopefully you understand why. Because the greatest common factor is 3, that means that basically it means that 3 times when the rate will be the same, basically. Because you can imagine, I guess, the least common multiple in a way. 48 times 51. Least common multiple is going to be the two numbers multiplied divided by the GCF. I can't really explain it perfectly. It kind of makes sense if you think about it, but like here maybe yeah, it's just a bit hard to explain. I'm sorry. But basically it's going to flash the same time for each common factor it is. So yeah, 15 flashes per minute. Yeah, you just gotta find the greatest common factor and divide it by it. Maybe I guess you can imagine it as 1 over 48. Really? No, 48. Yeah, I'm sorry. I really can't explain it well, but it makes sense in my head, but I can't really explain it in a way that I'm happy with. Just imagine that basically it repeats 3 times before kind of resetting, because the LCM would be 3 less than the two numbers multiplied. That doesn't really make any sense talking out loud, but hopefully you can kind of get it. And if not, I mean, get to question 61. There's never any shame in skipping question 61. Never. It is, it is often one of, if not the hardest problem on the test. 62. The odds of being hit by a meteorite is 1 over 8.4 times 10 power to 8. What's this fraction raised to negative 64, 826 power? And since this is a number less than 1, it's powered to a negative number, that means the actual number is going to be greater than 1. So it's an overflow problem instead of underflow. Your base, 1 over 8.4 times 10 power to 8, and then your exponent, negative 64826. Do that, and you'll get a value of 2.13 times 10 power to negative 578,525. And you're using the O-Find-F program. I guess I never said that. But if you watched any of my other videos, that's what you do every single time on this test, or on a question 62. Professional firework explodes at maximum elevation of 275 feet. It's fired straight into the air. What is its release velocity? Okay, we do have a program for this, but it's a little around what you might think it is. You have kinematics 1D, and then XVA, and this V stands for final velocity. So what's the final velocity? Well, it reaches its maximum elevation. So when basically it goes 275 feet, and then it ends with a velocity of 0 because it's reached its maximum. It's no longer moving. And then the acceleration is the negative 32.17 that you should have memorized for the strength of gravity in feet per second. Then once you have the velocity in feet per second, divide by 22, multiply by 15, you get 90.7 miles per hour. 64, identical right triangles. We need to figure out this side right here. There are numerous ways to do it. Actually, there might be, actually, it's a little more, actually, are there more than one ways to do it? I know Ivan found another way to do it. I guess it doesn't really matter. Uh, what you need to notice is that, or basically what you need to do is you need to find this hypotenuse, and then you sine on this triangle right here to figure out this side length here. So definition of cotangent, basically, or tangent of 34 power to negative 1 is adjacent over, or is opposite over adjacent, or sorry, adjacent over opposite. So you multiply it by the opposite to get you this side right here. So tangent of 34 power to negative 1 times 0.558. This is not inverse tangent, by the way. This is tangent of 34 power to negative 1, or 1 over tangent of 34. Then you have to multiply by 2 to get this side right, this entire side from here to here, to now here to there. And then you have to multiply by the sine of 34, because these are identical right triangles. This angle is also 34 degrees. So, and once you multiply sine, multiply by the hypotenuse, you get the opposite of 0.925. 65, square and semicircle. You have your square area is equal to your semicircle area. Okay, so basically we have, let's just do the equation for that. Basically, area of a circle is radius squared, so diameter over 2 squared times pi. Since it's a semicircle, you have to divide by 2. And then that is equal to some unknown x length squared. So then once you have that, now that you have your side length of your square, you need to subtract it by the radius of the circle as shown here. So x minus 276 divided by 2 gets you 35.0. Okay, that's the entire test. I hope you enjoyed. There are some few tricky problems on here, but overall this is a test that you can very well perform good on if you know your stuff. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, leave a comment or ask me in person if I'm still there by the time you watch this video. See you on the mathematics test I'll probably be doing next.